I'm going to take you on a quick journey, my journey with the cloud and how I ended up joining Red Hat, and some initial thoughts that I've had about Red Hat in the cloud journey. So please, just a few slides. We don't have a lot to go through, so jump on in with questions. I know a bunch of the delegates here, and I know you're not shy. So first, for anybody here that doesn't know me, as Stephen said, yeah, I put on here, here's my old photo on Tech Field Day. I was the host at EMC. Some of you might remember it. It was a large storage company, pretty well known. And I was the host for Tech Field Day 2. I've actually been a TFDX delegate, and I've made lots of the parties that Stephen and Tom and the crew have thrown over the years. So a lot of friends through, and love that. Because back in the day, in my 10 years at EMC, I ended up being, I was a blogger. I got early on social media. Yes, I'm at Stu on Twitter. And I'm pretty easy to find. So, love interacting with the community. So, of course, lots of overlap with the Tech Field Day crew. I'm a technologist at heart. A friend of mine once said technologist means that you are an optimist when it comes to technology. So that doesn't mean we chase every new shiny thing. I've spent most of my career in the enterprise. Most of that was on the vendor side. I did stint for 10 years recently as an analyst and a media person. So many people probably know me. I was one of the hosts of theCUBE. So that meant I did thousands of interviews, literally across the industry. Enterprise tech was our space. Cloud is a big area that I had. So if you look up on the screen, there's me on top with the founder of SiliconANGLE, with Andy Jassy, who of course is the CEO of AWS. There's below that Michael Dell, who some of you probably know, and probably looking at some of his machines in front of you. Down below is just some guy named Steven, who'd been on the program a number of times. Love having the conversations online and having a debate where we can all bring our facts and opinions and argue and maybe even change the way we think about things. So it's lovely when we can actually have conversations and debate in a civil manner. And down below, I have also recruited a number of guest hosts when I was on theCUBE. So Ute Piskar was one that I met when he was a practitioner CTO at a service provider, and got such interaction with him that he actually did hosting on theCUBE. He's done the only foreign language interview on theCUBE that we've ever had. And as part of theCUBE, I was digging into a lot of the emerging technologies. So everything from Docker to the cloud native activity with Kubernetes to serverless is where I spent a lot of time digging for the last couple of years. So that quick background on me. I was also, as a former vExpert for a number of years. And yeah, back in my EMC time, I was one of the first people working with VMware. I even trained EMC customer support on what virtualization was. So watching that you'll see the journey I'm going to talk about is going from kind of the enterprise mindset to the hyperscale and cloud mindset. Just in case you want to know what the main thing I'm going to talk about, on the left here, here's a great tweet that Ian Coldwater put out and said, we started with Kubernetes, and Kubernetes was wonderful. It won the orchestration wars, and it's going to solve world hunger. Well, where are we today? There's the CNCF landscape. There are hundreds of projects out there, and it is just, super challenging for anybody to look at how do I understand all of these pieces? How do I put them all together? Surely simplicity is not what I see when I look at the landscape. And the punchline that we have from Red Hat and the cloud solution is OpenShift is our platform. OpenShift, if you look in the center here, there is Kubernetes, but Kubernetes is just a thin layer. It's just a piece of the overall solution. When you get OpenShift, you get all of these pieces around. It's truly what a platform is. We really feel at the end of the day, we try to do as much as possible. How do we give simplicity with flexibility? Hopefully it shouldn't be a trade-off where you can only have one or the other. It's obviously a challenge. We obviously have work to do as an industry as a whole. And if you know Red Hat, 100% of what Red Hat does is open source driven. And what that means is there's customers driving that and that adoption. That's the punchline. So to take it back to my journey, as I said, I've been an analyst for 10 years. I really came from the enterprise model with a networking background. Those of you that, build in the enterprise way is, how do I have, N+2 reliability? Make sure that, nothing fails. And if anything around it does fail, I've got another component. I can fail over. I can make sure that things always work. This is the enterprise model. Randy Bias, a guy I got to know over the years, he came out with a great meme of pets versus cattle. Hopefully you're familiar with that. If you're not, it's a great way to describe. Of course, pets is the way, I coddled my server. I named my server. I really understood every bit and byte and knob and set them where they made sense for my environment. But I spend all my time running around, firefighting, responding to things, as opposed to the way the cloud providers think of it is as cattle. So we move them in, we feed them, we care for them, but we care for them in herds. And if something dies, well, if it's a rack of servers, you throw them in the wood chipper. If it's the cattle, well, maybe it's time to use them for food. There's an infographic on the right that I created back in my analyst days, just looking at the old stack versus the new stack. Once again, just very layered, lots of integration work that needed to be done. When you talk about the silos, where we live and we get our specialty to really go down, what the hyperscale providers do is they build applications that are resilient. Anybody in the cloud space, you've heard of things like the chaos monkey, so that if any component fails, things keep working. And as a matter of fact, we tend to inject failure in there to make sure that things can continue to work. So, the old way versus the new way, it does not change overnight. We still need to move the enterprise to be more like the hyperscalers. And the hyperscalers, if you watch them, are looking more and more like the enterprise providers. So need to think about architectures, need to think about our teams and our skill sets. And, how do we get away from silos and start moving towards, APIs and microservices so that things can interconnect and change without having to, go through the old model of, if I need to change something, oh, geez, we need to schedule that and it's going to take months. We need to be able to react faster. I think all of us learned in 2020, if we can't react fast, we're in big trouble. We get these words out there. I saw on Twitter when we were getting through, it's like, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. What is it? What is it not? Well, when I've been talking to customers in my career, you try to dig down and understand things. When they build their strategy, they're building out a cloud strategy. Why do I adopt cloud? I want to be able to move faster. I need to be able to respond to the business. I need to be able to respond to competition. In the early days, everyone said, cloud is cheap and it's simple. I think we really found out it is neither of those things. The other thing that people said was, well, cloud is this undifferentiated, massive stuff. It's not your computer. It's, something sitting off in another data center. That's what cloud is. Well, if any of you have spent any time listening to the cloud providers, I love the first year I went to Amazon reInvent show, like 7 years ago, got to listen to James Hamilton, who does some of the architecture. And he brings you inside the amount of customization, the amount of changes that they do, the differentiation between what traditional enterprise IT does, where they will build a temple for a couple $1 million in 18 months, is Amazon does everything at scale. I called it really hyper optimization is what they do. So they'll hire a PhD to say, hey, can I get 1% better power efficiency out of a power supply, or a couple of cents cheaper on something? And if they can do that, they'll scale that to tens of thousands of nodes. And therefore, it saves them, millions of dollars when they put that at scale. So it's just a very different way of thinking as to what cloud is and what cloud is not. So what is cloud? As I said before, it's really about taking advantage of, I need to be able to move faster. We used to think, it needs to, faster, better, cheaper, give me at least two of those. For many companies, if I can move faster, it's going to make up for other things. So, but it's not just speed, it's really about agility. When I make a decision today, I can't be locked into that for years. The cloud model is, I want to be able to use it for whenever I need it, whether that be months or a year or two, but knowing that whatever plans I made at the beginning of this year, well, those got thrown out the window, so I better be able to change. It's a great report that I love reading for the last bunch of years, called The State of DevOps. Talk about some of those false decisions that you need to make. Do I choose speed or do I choose security? Any of you that are steeped in the DevOps community, of course, have heard this a lot, but it takes repeat. It's important to repeat this, that actually, if I can break things down into smaller chunks, if I can continually deploy on a rapid basis, I'm actually going to increase my deployments and I'm going to reduce my number of failures, and I can make things more secure, because if I do them in big chunks, they tend to be more brittle. We tend to try to shove things into them, or it takes longer to get things done. We need to be able to respond faster. I said before, cloud's becoming more like the enterprise, and enterprise is becoming more like cloud. We see lots of news as to the ebb and flow between the data center and the public cloud, and now edge computing is there. The thing I've been looking at for a whole lot of years is it's really about building distributed systems, and your location will change. Where your data starts is often where it's going to stop. So where do we process information? Where does data live overall? And what are some of the economics here? So it's not a simple binary choice of everything is moving from the data center to the public cloud, and then, oh, the edge is killing the public cloud. Things are going to change. What I need now, what I need in the future, I need to be ready for that. And the other thing, I put up a picture of my friend Corey Quinn here. Actually been debating with him a bunch in Twitter, in a forum. The Cloud Health team had Corey and me do the great debate on multi-cloud. And it's funny because Corey wrote a blog post, and he said multi-cloud is the most horrible practice out there. And at the end of the debate, I said, look, multi-cloud isn't I take 2 or 3 clouds and I spread everything across them, or I choose one cloud and then I just move it to another cloud. It's from a business decision. I probably have a primary cloud. There might be a certain technology that I need from another provider. I might have acquired a company or have a certain regulation reason why I might want more than one cloud. So it is the skill sets that are so important. That's why you see companies like HashiCorp, like what we've been doing at Red Hat, being able to live across the cloud. So it's just, we have this visceral reaction often when we say multi-cloud. It doesn't mean follow the sun with stuff flying all over the place. Physics matter, skill sets matter a lot. There's a lot of things that matter, but there's that nuance and understanding, because today, if you talk to any company out there, like 5 years ago, I would do a poll and I say, okay, how many of you are using AWS? And then anybody that wasn't raising their hand, it's like, okay, we can run a tool to find out how many people in your organization are using AWS. If you do the same kind of poll today and say, how many of you are using more than one cloud? Reality is everyone is using more than one cloud. You're using SaaS from a lot of providers. You're using public clouds in a number of different ways, and the line does blur. I mean, Microsoft bought GitHub. You watch what Google's doing. Some of the other cloud providers beyond the big three. The landscape is changing, but multi-cloud is here today, and it will be here with us in the future. Another buzzword, cloud native. What does that really mean? It kind of bothered me for a long time that when you talk to so many people, it was go back. I mentioned by accident, OpenStack from Red Hat, and the OpenStack solutions out there. People got stuck in their head. OpenStack, we're going to build these public clouds. We're going to get rid of VMware, and we're going to beat AWS. And it was like, well, those are two huge battles. VMware and Amazon have great positions in the marketplace, and for the most part, their customers are happy what they're doing. Wrong goal. Today, OpenStack's actually been used quite a bit. Telco use cases are phenomenal. In some geographies outside of North America, they're doing well. But that's not the point. The reason I even mention it in cloud native, if you ask the average person what cloud native is, it is, I'm getting rid of my VMs and I'm adopting containers and I'm learning Kubernetes. It's like, really? That's cloud native? That's, saying that I'm learning to, become an automotive specialist, and I'm going to tell you that I am an expert with a spanner. And it's like, well, hey, that's awesome that you know that tool really well, but what if there's a new tool? What if there's a different way of doing things? So the definition that I had back when I was on the media and analyst side is, cloud native is I want to be able to plug into the cloud and take advantage of a huge ecosystem and the innovation that's happening there. Underneath the covers, are there a lot of containers? Absolutely. Are there some VMs? Sure. Is serverless going to be in the mix? Absolutely. Actually, I did a series this year, and I called it Cloud Native Insights, and most of the speakers that I had were a little bit more on the serverless side of things. I had Tim Wagner, who created the Lambda when he was at AWS, wrote the business case for it. I had Capital One, who was deploying serverless environments. I know you heard from AWS talking about Fargate and how they're looking to really bridge the worlds of Kubernetes and containers with that serverless mindset, which is really geared for the developer. And so much of it is that line between what the operator's doing, what the developer's doing. I love the line that we've used from Amazon for a lot of years is we need to get rid of undifferentiated heavy lifting. The challenge for our time in the IT world isn't whether you're important or whether cloud exists. It's where do you add value and importance to your business and things going forward. I think we all learned in the years of outsourcing that I can't just shift myself to something else and not know how it works. My Mess for Less failed miserably. Today's environment, I've talked to so many companies that they're now building many of their own apps, not because it's fun or it's cool or anything, but to be able to respond to the business. So SaaS is wonderful. There's huge growth in that, but I need to have skill sets in my company that many companies didn't have in the past. So that digital transformation, that modern company, once again, I hate not here to talk about buzzwords, but in my time, I found that there was a lot of reality there. So what did it mean if I'd gone through a digital transformation? Number one, data needs to be behind it. So the more data I have, the more understanding of, what my customers' needs are and how my business is working, that's phenomenal. I trained as a mechanical engineer, and what you learned in the manufacturing setting, what was done just in time, and some of those models are very similar in theory to what we're doing, with Agile, with DevOps, and some of the modern methodologies. And if I don't have data, I can't respond to it properly. And we're talking about builders. So very, very much the cloud is a place where I can try things out and I can build. The thing that I've seen so much in my career is before what could only be done by large companies or with a huge budget, now we're driving that down so that the individual or smaller companies can do things without with a much smaller budget. I no longer need to buy, some big rack of servers to be able to try this out. Hey, I can spin it up in the cloud. I don't need to take 6 months or a year to be able to get a project off and running. I can do things much faster. So at the end of the day, IT needs to be responsive. So much time in my career, if you went to IT and you asked for a project, their first response typically was no, or fill out all this paperwork and we'll go slow. As Alan Cohen, a friend of mine, said, we need to get them to go. Because if I don't go, I will go somewhere else. I was talking to Troy when we were putting together this presentation, and he said, look, Stu, shadow IT hasn't gone away. And that is so true. The bar that is set is it's public cloud and the services that are available. If just as in my personal life, if I go to my local store and they don't have something, well, chances are I'm going to just go to Amazon. Same thing from an IT standpoint. If I can't get something done fast, well, Amazon's also your answer there. So Amazon does great. And the other thing I've been wrestling with for the last few years is my background heavily is in infrastructure. Like I said, networking guy, I lived in the storage world for a lot of years. The only reason we have infrastructure is to drive those applications. What's important to business is applications and data, and everything else is just kind of plumbing. So much time when we talk about cloud, we talk about some of the bits and the bytes of what's happening in infrastructure. And, at the end of the day, what the business cares about is meeting their objectives and getting things done. Don't bog them down with a networking issue or a storage issue. How do we get things done and get them done faster?
I mean, I agree mostly with what you said, but actually I have a big doubt when every time we compare enterprises to hyperscaler, and, we see these models applied to enterprises. Actually, we I think that there is a reason for for hyperscaler to develop everything in house, because there is no application that fits actually their needs. So they start developing new application, and most of the time they own the entire stack, while the enterprise usually take advantage, especially in the open source, from something developed by one of these hyperscalers at the very beginning, and most of the time they work with compromises. I mean, they can't have 30,000 servers. They can't have unlimited resources, and the model cattle versus pets doesn't work 99% of the time. Maybe we can think about the application that we are moving the model a little bit. We were thinking about VMs as cattle vs pets. Now we are thinking about applications as cat vs pet, but that's not how we are using to work in how we work in enterprises. Even if we are trying to simulate the model, we are very far from reaching this cloud native approach.
Enrico, I hear you 1,000%, and that's I'm glad you asked it to kind of refocus. By no means am I saying that the enterprise is all of a sudden going to become Google. As a matter of fact, one of the wonderful things about cloud is I need to understand what things, why am I building it? Earlier in my career, boy, how many times did we talk through, rolling out Exchange or some, email? Nobody now, very few companies, roll their own email systems, because I can just, get it as a SaaS model. So there are definitely things that I should do very much where I should consume them. So that's where I'm saying the enterprise needs to look more like the hyperscalers, not at all become them. They don't have the resources. They don't have the PhDs. They don't have that kind of budget. It is more gradients along that journey. So I hear you 1,000%. I would say I have really like the pets versus cattle, because if I'm spending too much time, tweaking, and we all love those geek knobs, but at the end of the day, if I can get rid of most of them, I think we're going to be better off. But I need to, we're going to be able to get into some demos and some other piece to talk about real tech. So I'm through, kind of the high level piece. I want to share, this is just a slide I saw 2 years ago that kind of clicked for me, thinking about Red Hat specifically. So I've worked with Red Hat for about 20 years. I think I knew them pretty well. But if you think about, Linux out there, once again, this is 2018 data. The amount of change that happens on a monthly basis in Linux is phenomenal. And by the way, Kubernetes is the same way. The only constant in our industry is change. Most companies were set up for, if you're more than a 10-year-old company, you were set up with an 18-month cycle. You followed the TikTok of Intel. Or if you're a software company, we had our yearly release, maybe, a 6-month, minor release every once in a while. Open source projects like Linux, like Kubernetes, like many others, are set on a much faster pace, and we have to deal with a massive amount of change. Red Hat's whole being is taking that change, making sure that it works so that the enterprise doesn't have to worry about it. So as I said, I worked with Red Hat a long time. Maybe this resonates with you, maybe it doesn't, but a lot of change over time. And yeah, it's just one of those things that kind of struck me as, wow, there's going to be more change in the future. And that's the way Red Hat's structured to be able to deal with that sort of thing. I've touched on most of this in some of my other discussions. It's not binary. There's a lot of nuance here. Location, we spent a lot of time talking about. It matters about my application. Where do I do my processing? Where does my data live? What actually needs to move and be shared? Kubernetes, as I said, is wonderful, but was never designed to be a silver bullet. It is a very thin layer, and there's lots of things that we need to go around them. Multi-cloud. Again, I touched on this. It does not mean, all the clouds all the time, nor does it mean that I can't take advantage of the services in a cloud. And I think I talked about the rest here. The applications, we know we need to modernize things. We know that is the long pole in the tent. Lift and shift. might be a great starting point, but you better be modernizing your environment. If you don't, and you've moved just lift and shift into the cloud or near the cloud or on the cloud, you are really going to find that the costs and the operational savings are not there. And we talked at the top about, what Red Hat looks at is how to provide an opinionated platform, but also have flexibility. So couple quick things, just since I am the intro for the Red Hat session here. Why did I make the decision to join Red Hat? I'd known them for a long time. We think there is a huge opportunity there. There's a big reason why, IBM spent, $34 billion on Red Hat. It's a huge opportunity. The Red Hat team is growing very fast. I joined the cloud platform team, which is, we're hiring. There's already a number of people on the team that have been here shorter than me. So check the job boards if you're interested in coming to join a board. And personally, I'd had a lot of interaction, not just with Red Hat employees and their partners, but a lot of customers. It really struck me that, number one, could Red Hat give me a lot of customers? As you see there's over 2,000, Kubernetes-based container platform customers, over 100 public references. I got the opportunity to interview a lot of them, everything from, big banks and Delta Airlines to, a medical university in the Toronto area, helping to fight COVID using data visualization and how fast they could ramp up what they did. So, I loved some of what Red Hat has, the vision, the mission, and it's the first company, I didn't know this before I joined, but they even have a why. So hopefully most of you are familiar with Simon Sinek. He says, always start with why. The why for Red Hat is to open unlocks the world's potential. So look, it resonated with me. At this point in my career, I wanted to not just join, a good product and a good team, but a mission that I believe in. And that's one of the things that brought me to Red Hat. So the final piece, back to, I said there's that problem. There's so much out there. This is, the stack. You put out a great tweet saying that, we have not done a good job in IT of making this easy. And boy, do we agree. It resonates with us so much. And that is the goal that we have, is to try to simplify this while giving some more flexibility. So if this is the overall stack, I've got my OS, I've got my container management with Kubernetes, and then I've got lots of services on top of it. And we're going to be able to demo and dig into the multi-cluster management in some of those pieces. We have an opinionated version. If you say, hey, Red Hat, can you do the whole stack for us? Absolutely. We've got it. Every single piece of this is driven by an open source project. Everything you want, our container, our networking, our AI services, there's lots of things that we can do, but it is not limited only to the Red Hat solution. Red Hat's open. That means everything we can do, is pluggable. So yes, we're prescriptive on the Linux and the Kubernetes that needs to be offered, because just if you want us to support it, that's what we need. Everything else on top of that, does have some flexibility. We've got this wonderful site called, it's the operatorhub.io. Every logo in here is just some of the partners. We actually have 162 operators today, all of those applications that can live on the Red Hat Kubernetes, OpenShift offering, and it's changeable. So even something like, the storage world, there are 21 different operators out there, everyone from Portworx, who you heard about earlier this week, to, mild compatriots at Dell EMC, and a lot of options in between. So I like to say, when I look at everything from your AWS and Azure all the way through to your Z systems, we can live on that, in your data center, in the cloud, in the edge. OpenShift can go everywhere. And that flexibility with simplicity is the ultimate goal. And we're working really closely with lots of customers and have been for years to mature that ecosystem. That's why we've got leadership in the environment.
I have a question. With all you just went over, I'm obviously been sold on this stuff for a long time. Why are we still saying this stuff over and over again? It seems like this has been years in the making. There are many people who are there. People on this panel all know my opinions now. I've not been hiding them. why are we still saying? Why do we still have to keep pounding the same drum?
Yeah, Calvin, that is a great question. And if you look at the general, what is the diffusion of technology? Where are we in the adoption curve? We absolutely, I believe we've, crossed the chasm, but we are getting into the vast majority of things. So applications are tough to change. My skill set, it's tough to ramp up on what we're doing. Look, right, we've been doing this for a number of years. We've got a lot of customers that are already far along that journey. I love the feedback. Thank you.
Go forth, fight the good fight.
Stuart, if I can actually add to your response there. Yeah, we've crossed the chasm, but the next chasm is coming. Right? And so I think it's good to look at the journey that we've been on so far and what's changed, knowing it's going to change again. So I think some of that history is useful because it's preparation for what's to come.